Book 1, Chapter 7 of Michael Strogoff, Courier of the Tsar. This recording is in the public domain. Michael Strogoff by Jules Verne. Book 1, Chapter 7 Going Down the Volga. A little before midday, the steamboat's bell drew to the wharf on the Volga an unusually large concourse of people, for not only were those about to embark who had intended to go, but the many who were compelled to go contrary to their wishes. The boilers of the Caucasus were under full pressure. A slight smoke issued from its funnel, whilst the end of the escape pipe and the lids of the valves were crowned with white vapor. It is needless to say that the police kept a close watch over the departure of the Caucasus, and showed themselves pitiless to those travelers who did not satisfactorily answer their questions. Numerous Cossacks came and went on the quay, ready to assist the agents, but they had not to interfere, as no one ventured to offer the slightest resistance to their orders. Exactly at the hour the last clang of the bells sounded, the powerful wheels of the steamboat began to beat the water, and the Caucasus passed rapidly between the two towns of which Nijni Novgorod is composed. Michael Strogoff and the young Livonian had taken passage on board the Caucasus. Their embarkation was made without any difficulty. As is known, the podorojna, drawn up in the name of Nicholas Korpanoff, authorized this merchant to be accompanied on his journey to Siberia. They appeared therefore to be a brother and sister traveling under the protection of the imperial police. Both, seated together at the stern, gazed at the receding town, so disturbed by the governor's order. Michael had as yet said nothing to the girl. He had not even questioned her. He waited until she should speak to him, when that was necessary. She had been anxious to leave the town, in which, but for the providential intervention of this unexpected protector, she would have remained imprisoned. She said nothing, but her looks spoke her thanks. The Volga, the Ra of the ancients, the largest river in all Europe, is almost 3,000 miles in length. Its waters, rather unwholesome in its upper part, are improved at Nijni Novgorod by those of the Oka, a rapid affluent, issuing from the central provinces of Russia. The system of Russian canals and rivers has been justly compared to a gigantic tree whose branches spread over every part of the empire. The Volga forms the trunk of this tree, and it has for roots 70 mouths opening into the Caspian Sea. It is navigable as far as Riev, a town in the government of Tver, that is, along the greater part of its course. The steamboats plying between Perm and Nijni Novgorod rapidly perform the 250 miles which separate this town from the town of Kasan. It is true that these boats have only to descend the Volga, which adds nearly 2 miles of current per hour to their own speed, but on arriving at the confluence of the Kama, a little below Kasan, they are obliged to quit the Volga for the smaller river, up which they ascend to Perm. Powerful as were her machines, the Caucasus could not thus, after entering the Kama, make against the current more than 10 miles an hour. Including an hour's stoppage at Kasan, the voyage from Nijni Novgorod to Perm would take from between 60 to 62 hours. The steamer was very well arranged, and the passengers, according to their condition or resources, occupied 3 distinct classes on board. Michael Strogoff had taken care to engage 2 first-class cabins, so that his young companion might retire into hers whenever she liked. The Caucasus was loaded with passengers of every description. A number of Asiatic traders had thought it best to leave Nijni Novgorod immediately. In that part of the steamer reserved for the first class might be seen Armenians in long robes and a sort of mitre on their heads; Jews, known by their conical caps; rich Chinese in their traditional costume, a very wide blue, violet, or black robe; Turks wearing the national turban; Hindus with square caps, and a simple string for a girdle, some of which hold in their hands all the traffic of Central Asia; and lastly Tartars, wearing boots ornamented with many colored braid, and the breast a mass of embroidery. All these merchants had been obliged to pile up their numerous bales and chests in the hold and on the deck, and the transport of their baggage would cost them dear, for according to the regulations, each person had only a right to 20 pounds weight. In the bows of the Caucasus were more numerous groups of passengers, not only foreigners, but also Russians, who were not forbidden by the order to go back to their towns in the province. There were moujiks with caps on their heads, and wearing checked shirts under their wide pelisses; peasants of the Volga, with blue trousers stuffed into their boots, rose-colored cotton shirts, drawn in by a cord, felt caps; a few women, habited in flowery patterned cotton dresses, gay colored aprons, and bright handkerchiefs on their heads. These were principally third-class passengers, who were, happily, not troubled by the prospect of a long return voyage. The Caucasus passed numerous boats being towed up the stream, carrying all sorts of merchandise to Nijni Novgorod. Then passed rafts of wood interminably long, and barges loaded to the gunwale, and nearly sinking under water. A bootless voyage they were making, since the fair had been abruptly broken up at its outset. The waves caused by the steamer splashed on the banks, covered with flocks of wild duck, who flew away uttering deafening cries. A little farther, on the dry fields, bordered with willows and aspens, were scattered a few cows, sheep, and herds of pigs. Fields, sown with thin buckwheat and rye, stretched away to a background of half cultivated hills, offering no remarkable prospect. The pencil of an artist in quest of the picturesque would have found nothing to reproduce in this monotonous landscape. The Caucasus had been steaming on for almost 2 hours, when the young Livonian, addressing herself to Michael, said: "Are you going to Irkutsk, brother?" "Yes, sister," answered the young man, "we are going the same way. Consequently, where I go, you shall go." "Tomorrow, brother, you shall know why I left the shores of the Baltic, to go beyond the Ural Mountains." "I ask you nothing, sister." "You shall know all," replied the girl, with a faint smile. "A sister should hide nothing from her brother. But I cannot today. Fatigue and sorrow have broken me." "Will you go and rest in your cabin?" asked Michael Strogoff. "Yes, yes, and tomorrow—" "Come, then." He hesitated to finish his sentence, as if he had wished to end it by the name of his companion, of which he was still ignorant. "Nadia," said she, holding out her hand. "Come, Nadia," answered Michael, "and make what use you like of your brother Nicholas Korpanoff." And he led the girl to the cabin engaged for her off the saloon. Michael Strogoff returned on deck, and eager for any news which might bear on his journey, he mingled in the groups of passengers, though without taking any part in the conversation. Should he by any chance be questioned, and obliged to reply, he would announce himself as the merchant Nicholas Korpanoff, going back to the frontier, for he did not wish it to be suspected that a special permission authorized him to travel to Siberia. The foreigners in the steamer could evidently speak of nothing but the occurrences of the day, of the order and its consequences. These poor people, scarcely recovered from the fatigue of a journey across Central Asia, found themselves obliged to return, and if they did not give loud vent to their anger and despair, it was because they dared not. Fear, mingled with respect, restrained them. It was possible that inspectors of police, charged with watching the passengers, had secretly embarked on board the Caucasus, and it was just as well to keep silence. Expulsion, after all, was a good deal preferable to imprisonment in a fortress. Therefore the men were either silent, or spoke with so much caution that it was scarcely possible to get any useful information. Michael Strogoff thus could learn nothing here, but if mouths were often shut at his approach, for they did not know him, his ears were soon struck by the sound of one voice, which cared little whether it was heard or not. The man with the hearty voice spoke Russian but with a French accent, and another speaker answered him more reservedly. "What?" said the first. "Are you on board this boat too, my dear fellow? You whom I met at the Imperial Fete in Moscow, and just caught a glimpse of at Nijni Novgorod?" "Yes, it's I," answered the second dryly. "Really, I didn't expect to be so closely followed." "I am not following you, sir, I am preceding you." "Precede, precede! Let us march abreast, keeping step, like two soldiers on parade, and for the time, at least, let us agree, if you will, that one shall not pass the other." "On the contrary, I shall pass you." "We shall see that, when we are at the seat of war; but till then, why, let us be traveling companions. Later, we shall have both time and